the keys, the fingertips that reach out to touch them, the string that begs to be bent? Or is it in the notes on a page, a foot to a pedal, the infinite space between imagination and skill? Or is it simply music?
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the 13th Note Art of Mastery podcast. And this is the podcast where we talk about mastery, we talk about refinement, we talk about excellence. And today we have somebody that's extremely unique in the industry. And let me just start by saying this. In real estate, particularly in home sales, it is now $1 trillion business. So one of the key components to sell your home on the market is the art of staging. And today we are blessed with the cornerstone of this professional staging industry. She is the CEO of the largest staging association on this planet. She is the key player in developing ASP education and certifications for the industry. Please welcome Jennie Norris. How are you doing, Jennie?
I'm great. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me on. And thank you to all those who are watching now and in the future. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. I'm so glad that you're able to come on and kind of discuss something that I think a lot of people know of it, heard of it, but not quite sure what is of it. So can you just share with us a little bit in regards to the art of staging to the audience?
Sure. So the art of staging, it's preparing houses or properties for sale. And it really is an art and a science behind what a stager does when they see a property. We have to consider the rooms, the flow, the scale of the house, and the target buyer. And all those things come into play when we are making selections of what we're going to use in a property and how we place it, and even the colors. So it's definitely an art form. It's creative. But there is a science behind it, if you will, or a process that is something that we teach to other people who want to get into the industry. So it's not something that is rocket science, but there definitely is not just go find furniture someplace and stick it in a house. There's a lot more to it.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I was also in the home sales industry along with Kat, my wife. And most of you who's out there in the podcast land knows Kat, of course, from Kat's Home Chat and the Miracles Online podcast. Now, when we got involved into real estate, we were both selling new homes. So we were taught to just stage a vignette, which is basically hang a towel on the towel rack, right? Stick a chair in the corner.
Right. Put a chair by the fireplace and then have a pillow on it and maybe an ottoman. And this is where you could sit and read a book. And that's what we did 24 years ago, but not today.
Yeah. No, not at all. As a matter of fact, let's start with the beginning of this. How did you, let's start with even when you were K through 12. What kind of kid were you going to school and what kind of things were you interested in?
So I was a kid that every teacher would love to have in a classroom because I was obeyed all the rules. I was advanced, so I would work ahead in workbooks. So I worked independently. I was not hired. I worked in like the school secretary when she'd go on lunch. They'd have myself go sit at the desk when I was in grade school. And so I was trusted by the teachers and the administration. So never was tardy, followed all the rules. I was a good student, excelled in every subject. So I would categorize myself as sort of an overachiever throughout my grade school. Love a challenge, love to help people. Part of my character, we moved around a lot as a kid. So I went to 6 different elementary schools.
Wow.
2 different junior highs, 1 high school. So all within California, all within the same state. But my parents, we'd end up moving like every 6 years. And there was a period of time where I want to get in the whole story, but I was in 4th grade and my parents got conned. Basically, it was a business thing and they got conned. And so that year I moved fourth grade, finished out fourth grade at one elementary school. And then my parents bought a house. We moved across town. So, a lot of shakeup, but wherever I went, my goal was to make friends and, make the teachers happy as well as myself, get good grades and so forth.
Yeah.
And, when I got into high school, well, I started on a performance team when I was 11, started competing and did that through sixth grade, through junior high, got into the high school team. I was the only freshman that made it onto the dance squad. You had to try out for that over the team. I became captain my senior year, traveled to Japan, South Africa, the Caribbean, Hawaii. So had these opportunities to travel and meet people, and saw early on that when you apply yourself and, have goals that you set and challenge yourself, that, you can achieve things in a positive way.
Absolutely. I agree. So you can see that the background was definitely set in regards to achievements and in regards to efforts put in, refinement, rehearsed practice, no doubt, right? So these are all the so-called tools that you have instilled at a young age. So take us all the way now. After high school, you went to UCLA, am I correct?
I did, yes.
Right. And what did you do in college at that point?
So I started out as a biology major and then psychobiology. My intention was to go to medical school. My dad was a psychiatrist. And so I thought, well, I'll follow in his footsteps. And just, and I got an A+ in calculus at UCLA, and I love math and the sciences and so forth. But I calculated at that time I'd be 32 when I finished everything, residency and everything. And I thought, God, that is so old. And I just didn't have it in me and didn't enjoy some of the coursework either. So I sort of switched gears at that point. And my dad actually, wisely, he passed away 7 years ago today, actually, but he said to me, medicine is changing and it's becoming more socialized with the insurance companies really controlling things. And so he actually said, because his practice, he took direct billing and so forth. He didn't participate in all the insurance stuff if he could avoid it. But doctors today, the rates are set. It's very hard. So he said, why don't you take a look at marketing? So my first job out of college was for an environmental consulting firm. They had occupational physicians, industrial hygienists, toxicologists, epidemiologists. And so I got on with the marketing team, and we, created marketing campaigns and sent out quotes and so forth. And I found I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So I eventually got into sales with an analytical laboratory, which is an offshoot of that industry. So our company would be the ones that would come in to Superfund sites or cleanups or identify, toxic areas and work on remediating them and getting them cleaned up. So it was an interesting industry, and I really loved the marketing. So that's what I did out of college.
And this is around what, mid-20s in your age?
Yeah, so I was 22 and I got married after I graduated, and then got my first job at 22.
Okay. And have you started a family at this age, or is this a little bit further?
No. So the family came later. We had some, John and I got married, and then, I had some issues with miscarriages and so forth. So our first child didn't come until I was 29. Okay. Then I had 4 children in 5 years.
Wow. So it fruited really well.
Yeah.
And John, of course, you met him in college, right?
Yes.
So, and at this point, when you guys got out of the college, and I know you guys currently work together quite a bit,
yes.
This is one of the things we'll get into a little bit down the line, but when you got into marketing and then eventually then moved over to sales, was he parallel with you on this, or was he doing something entirely different?
His career started, he was sales with the IT industry. So Fortune 500 sales. He got on with a company called NCR back then. So he was already doing corporate accounting and sales, outside sales. He had quotas. So he had a lot more pressure than I did. And he made more money than I did too, because when you're in sales and you are commissioned, it's just, you can go after the deals and make that money, versus when you're salaried or hourly rate at marketing in-house. I did okay. I got raises, like 3 raises my first year, because they realized, okay, she's not some, person that just doesn't know anything. So they recognized my abilities, but there's a limit. So Our careers didn't really parallel until I started staging in 2002, and then he got into real estate in 2004. That's when we
Oh,
really synced up.
right. Right. Interesting. And so were you even aware of this industry, staging industry, prior to 2002?
I was, only because we were selling our property in the
Mhm.
Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and my agent brought a stager, a home stager. Goes, I can bring this home stager over, and I'm like, home stager, what is that?
Mhm.
And so she did a
Right.
consultation with us where I basically took the notes. So I walked around with her, took notes. She told me what I had to do to get the house ready. I implemented everything, and the
Mhm.
house sold. And so I sort of tucked that little information away in my head, and we were moving out of the area to a different, about 2 hours away from where we lived. So
Right.
when I was shopping for properties, I started realizing that nobody was staging. This was Sacramento area. Not one house
Mhm.
was staged. It was a hot
Mhm.
market. I get all excited on the outside looking at a house, like, oh, this looks really nice. And I'd walk in and it was just trashed, or they didn't even clean up. It was crowded, cluttered. And I wasn't a
Mhm.
stager yet, but I certainly had that
Right.
reaction that buyers have when they walk into a house that's just a mess, like the
Mhm.
sellers didn't even make a bed. And
Mhm.
I remember one house was so, the seller was an older gentleman. I believe his wife had probably passed away, but he was a Red Skelton fan, the comedian.
Mm.
So he had every
Yep.
Red Skelton collector plate lining his walls. He had little figurines, and
Wow.
so yeah, I know. So I remember that house as the Red Skelton house, and he also had commercial size clothing racks jammed
Yeah.
full of clothes, female clothes in the bedrooms. I felt so claustrophobic. I literally said to the agent, "Get me out of here! I can't breathe."
Mm.
And I wasn't a stager
Interesting.
yet. Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. As a matter of fact, around the summer time, 2001, 2002, we were moving out of California because, that state was
Yes.
just
Yeah.
starting to fall apart at that point. And Kat was already a realtor, right? The only thing she knew of is that we have to be showroom ready. And that was the key word that was driven into my head. So literally we presented the entire house as if you were looking at it. And I had no idea there was an industry or a name for it at that time. But the house sold in less than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was not, $200,000 house. It was $500,000. So I was really impressed in regards to just how the presentation of your living areas and your main sections, like such as kitchens and things of that nature, was the
Bathrooms, all that.
driver. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I
So
remember when I did my research initially looking at the staging industry,
yeah.
um, there were two big players in Southern California at the time. So one of them was Meredith
Mhm.
Bear, and then I couldn't tell you other company, but neither one would step into the property for less than $5,000. Her fee was probably higher. And this was
Yeah.
again 2002. So I believe staging really kind of started catching on in the late 90s, 98, 99. The first
Mhm.
courses were offered in 99. So
Mhm.
as a career option, that's when I believe it started. That's not to say that people weren't, fixing their houses up, or agents weren't advising sellers to do certain things, but it wasn't
Right.
called staging as far as somebody having a business. Like, there weren't a lot of professional home stagers at that point.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so, realizing that's a viable industry. And of course, it started in the Seattle area, and then it jumped over where I lived in Sacramento and hit the Bay Area. So that was the
Mhm.
next big
Mhm.
hub. Today, you'd be hard pressed to find a house in the San Francisco Bay Area, San Jose, and surrounding cities that is not staged when it hits the market. They
Right.
really are a great market for that.
Right. Yeah, I think it's infiltrated into the business, the industry, that this is part of the package. It's no different than, you got to mow your lawn and manicure your so-called curb appeal and those type of things. And the thing, let's talk about this. And when I did my research, when Kat was getting into staging from a home builder, and for those of you that's out there that doesn't know Kat's story, is that she was selling for a reputable home builder, and there was typical, like anything else, the houses that sit too long, wasn't moving and so forth. So she started doing research and so forth, and she found Barb Schwartz.
Hmm.
And Barb Schwartz is the person that kind of opened up the floodgate, if you will, and created this industry, right? So if you will share a little bit about this, this happened in the late 70s, early 80s. Am I correct, Jenny?
Well, so
That
she coined
how,
the phrase. Is 1972 was when she coined the phrase home staging, and that was as a real estate agent, a realtor. She had a
okay.
design background, so she'd tell her clients do these certain things, and they would resist.
Mhm.
And she just knew if they just would clean their house, rearrange some stuff, that it would help. So she
Right.
finally made the analogy to staging your house, like they set the stage in the theater. You know,
Mhm.
you have an audience; those
Right.
are the buyers. You have the critics, which are other agents and sellers. You have the star, which is the homeowner. You have the producer, which is the listing agent. And stagers at that point didn't exist as a profession. So you flash forward. And so she went on a speaking tour in the 80s. So she educated a lot of real estate agents at that time. But again, stagers really weren't in the mix. So it wasn't
Mhm.
until the late 90s she started Staged Homes, founded that in 99 along with the International Association of Home Staging Professionals, or IHOSP. So both
Mhm.
of those were launched in 99. And that's when the first
Yeah.
courses really took off. So she frameworked the courses really about teaching stagers how they fit into the real estate industry, and
Mhm.
why a realtor would want to hire them, you know, the hot buttons for them, and then how to set up a business. And then, of course, over time, things have been added to it and evolved, and, you know, kept
Right.
it up to date for today's staging industry.
Right. And from what I've learned is that you then got involved with her
Yes.
when you just started down that road. And what year would this be?
So 2002 is when I took my class from her.
Mhm.
2003, I was elected vice president of IHOSP, and that was through the vote from the people that were part of the membership at the time. And I
Mhm.
started contributing. I was the business coach from 2003 to 2005. And, you
Mhm.
know, I've always been someone that wants to help people succeed. I share everything. I started a team in Sacramento. I think I was probably the first stager with an official team, and I did it geographically. I covered 3 different counties, and I didn't want to travel an
Mhm.
hour from my home to go somewhere. So I found somebody who took the course, the accredited staging professional course, that was from that area. And I invited them to join the team. They didn't want to market or have to build the business. They just wanted to stage. So it was
Mhm.
at the height of that, I had 7 stagers from different areas that I could send business to. Um, and then we would work together. So I was creating things, you know, team guidelines, and
Mhm.
you know, even the definition of what is an accreditation versus a designation versus a certification. So people throw those
Mhm.
terms around. So I wrote an article on that and educated people, and that went into the course material that became part of the book. The coach's
Mhm.
corner became part of the book. You know, business planning became part of the book. The marketing plan became part of the book. So in the book, I mean the accredited staging professional manual.
Mhm.
So the groundwork, of course, the guts of the course is what, you know, Barb had educated with the agents all those years, because it's the agents that hire the stagers, and you want to have real estate agents as clients because they're repeat, like investors are now as well, and
Yes.
builders, but typically the agent, and how we fit in.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so that started in 2003. I've always served in leadership and given and volunteered of my time. I've sent out like independent contractor agreements. I was probably the first one to come up with those. Sent
Mhm.
those out to, I can't even tell you how many people I've sent those to. So you know, I know you haven't asked this question, but it probably would come up later. But why do I
Sure.
do what I do? And it's to, you know, it's to help people. I want to
Yeah.
help people succeed. So, you know, the books I've written, the things that I've done is to help the future stagers or those that are
Mhm.
currently in it, because you know you want the industry to succeed and have longevity.
Right.
So yeah, so a lot of the content, you know, even this book, the Marketing Made Simple book that we'll talk about, originally when I wrote
Mhm.
it, I then approached Barb and I said I would like to have you as co-author on the book, even though she didn't write any of it, the content.
Mhm.
And she
Right.
revised a couple of things in it, but nothing significant. And I did
Yeah.
that because I wanted to honor her as the founder and creator of the industry. And so
Yeah.
but you know, the book really was something that I wrote based on my marketing background, as far as
Yeah.
what needs to be done to succeed in marketing. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just needs to be consistent. And that marketing, I would say, is the number one place where stagers fail, because
Mhm.
marketing always leads to sales. And if you don't market, nobody knows
Yeah.
about you, and you get discouraged. You won't have any revenue, and you're going to go out of business because you don't have any work.
Yeah.
So that really is, and I'm fortunate to have that background. I know not a lot of
Right.
stagers do, but there are people like me, and even you, I know you have a
Yeah.
marketing background, that teach what to do. So it's just a
Yes.
matter of tapping into, you know,
Right.
What's available?
And when Barb was starting to do this, she was on her own. And then slowly but surely, she started recognizing the potential of this industry. And tell me about the early years when you first got involved with her and seeing the potential of this. Was there even the impression that it was going to become what it became today, which is international business?
I think that Barb is always one that was always like dream big, now dream bigger than that. So I believe she had the vision for where it would go.
Right.
Just naming the association, the International Association. I've said this many times. She could have called it the National Association of Home Staging Professionals. She called it international. So I believe in her plan in her mind that it would be global. It didn't happen while she was at the helm. We didn't go to Europe until 2018 after I was the president and CEO for 2 years.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, really because trying to find the right people to put in place there and then having the ability to support that and being able to advance the growth.
Right.
But it's very cool though. Any place a property is bought or sold, we can stage it. So the fact that it is in so many countries. I mean, I just spoke at a Kazakhstan event on November 1st. It was a virtual Kazakhstan, and they're on fire. Their real estate market's strong. They've got a ton of stagers. And so really what the barrier right now is language barrier. So one of the things we're focused on is translating a lot of content for people in other countries who need the information and the education.
Right. Let's talk about the aspect of the staging. And I know for our audience out there, a lot of folks probably never even really understood the concept until right now they're hearing, you got to put the house together in a way. And one of the things that you've always preached very strongly on the whole entire organization is that it creates emotion and it connects the buyer to that specific property. Can you kind of give us an insight regards to when was this recognized, when you guys are, as a team start thinking, hey, we need to do this. Hey, you know what? Color palette matters, placement, flow and all these things became the emotional grab to the buyers. Share a little bit of that with us.
So I believe like early on, anybody talking to real estate agents, whether it's staging, other affiliates and so forth, you talk about buying a property, they'd say, even myself and probably anybody watching, if you've bought a property, you walk in and you can feel the difference when the house is prepared and it's clean and the furnishings look nice and colors and so forth. It feels different. So I feel like early on that was made very clear to people in the industry as far as stagers. But I still find it challenges, even in my own market here in the Denver region. Agents will say, well, I've never had to stage a house before, or sellers will resist doing it. And to me, it's just like, it doesn't compute, because we use the analogy, detail your house like you detail your car. And where's the money? It's in the house, not the car, because cars depreciate. Houses should be appreciating. They're a big asset. Why wouldn't people clean it up and make it look as presentable as possible for the target buyer? And I think the disconnect, I think they understand that, but I think the disconnect is that sellers still think that they're in charge of the market and what a buyer will experience, and not understanding that they're not buying their house back. So they need to prepare it for this unknown person, and being willing to do that, being willing to make the changes and understand that it's not about the seller you're selling. It's about this person that we're trying to appeal to. So if we tell you to paint or bring in different furnishings, it's not just because we want you to spend money. We want you to invest it up front so that your house shows the best to the target buyer. So then when they come in, they're grabbed emotionally. And it's not just the furnishings, it's the artwork, the decor, the layers. All of that is carefully thought out. And I've gone into houses where they've stripped everything off the counters. It's just furniture. So it's like, to me, it's like a cake with no frosting.
Yes.
Agree. Even though frosting might be sugary and so forth, it's prettier when the frosting and the sprinkles are on there versus just the furnitures or the cake. So the furniture alone is not enough. You have to have artwork. You have to have things that are on trend, color wise, style wise. And that's what a stager invests in, tens of thousands, if not more, hundreds of thousands for some of the bigger companies per year. They're buying items in order to put in properties to appeal to that target audience. And sellers need to understand that it's not an option to get the price they want, especially in today's market.
Right. Yeah. As a matter of fact, let me just kind of give the audience a reality check on the aspect of being a professional stager. I mean, a legit professional stager. You are ready to be able to go into any situation and create that emotion correctly with the way that the house is designed and so forth. I know I was the one that was given the keys to go do inventory at the warehouse. Just in pillows alone was almost $50,000.
It's
Just
crazy.
pillows.
Yeah.
But again, this is what you were saying, that color pop, that little bit off the set that brings the warmth in, so you feel invited. This is the biggest difference that I think that most agents who are not using home stagers are missing the point, and it's because, let's say, okay, I'm taking my client out, we're going to go drive and see these 5 houses, and their agenda is so blinders on the 5 houses, opposed to walking into a house and the buyer goes, oh, this feels like home.
Yeah.
That okay, how much does it feel like home? It feels perfect. Then why are you worrying about the other 4 houses?
Right. Well, it's also buyers will sometimes purchase a property that doesn't have, like, they'll have your hot list, like, we have to have this many bedrooms, we need, we want a yard, they have their things in the ideal scenario, and most houses may not hit every single one of them. But we've experienced that buyers are willing to give up one of their wants because the house feels better than other properties, and it makes them feel like this could be my home, and they end up purchasing it even though it doesn't have all of their target items that they really said they wanted, which is the power of staging.
Yes.
Yes. You create the vision for people. You let them see the possibilities. And the furniture needs to be on trend and stylish and to scale, because the buyer immediately starts putting their things in, and how is it going to fit? But it also gives them, like, we just staged a property that's kind of dated, has not been updated, but by putting today's style furnishings in and the artwork and so forth, it looks amazing. And so buyers, they don't have to necessarily come in and say, like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to put all this money into this house to get it up to date. They can actually furnish it and it looks nice. And then they can maybe fix it up over time. So that's the power of staging as well. It can, it can make something older feel newer because of the items that we use in the staging.
Yes. Incredibly, that part is the art. I think that is where the uniqueness of the stager, who, let's say, passionately invest themselves into the industry, they're the ones that are able to identify and create those great magic moments. And where other that often say, oh yeah, I like to stage, but never had training, never really have foresight or thought toward it. And I see this a lot, and especially in the in-house people that works for new home builders. One of the companies I went to work for, and I remember walking into their model home and immediately thinking to myself, what are you guys doing here? Because it was just crammed everywhere to make sure that they didn't have a space to breathe. Right.
Well, it's also they want to sell their design center, because when you buy a new construction, so the model homes are used 2 different ways. One, to help sell the community, but it also then sells their design center features, so that when I buy a new home, I can go in and be like, oh, I want that tile, I want that rug, I love that, this or that. So they back in the day, and I know they don't do this as much anymore, but back when you and Kat were selling, I'm sure they did the theme rooms with, like, surfboards coming out of walls. And I remember one series of model homes, they used 3 colors in every house, just 3. So every tchotchke, every piece of art, every piece of fabric, it was one of these 3 colors. And it was interesting, but it's also wasn't necessarily realistic, because people don't necessarily live that way. When we stage, artwork is usually what we pull the color out of. We'll pick a color that we're going to feature, and we string that throughout the house. But it's, it was kind of ridiculous. But the model homes, when they had all the themes, and they would mix, because they wanted to sell the design center. So you'd have a house that had red kitchen tile, which, what are you thinking? If they're trying to push that red tile or something. And I wouldn't, as a buyer, wouldn't want to purchase that, but it showed somebody who did want that in their house, this is what it'll look like. And those model homes become really hard to sell the way they were done back in the day, because every room was different. It wasn't cohesive. And so you had this mishmash of different, flooring, different countertops and so forth. And I know today, my belief is that they're not doing that. They're merchandising it differently. And a lot of stagers have actually gotten into merchandising for these production builders and getting away from these crazy setups, with the themes and so forth, and, creating something that looks nice for reality for the target buyers.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to. I think as the real estate market start to change. I mean, when I was doing research for this podcast with you, I couldn't believe that in 1980, the median price for housing is $67,000
It's
single family home,
insane. Yep.
right?
And that nationwide, and
And
now it's probably what, 400?
well, we're sitting around high twos to three
Oh, okay.
in today's market. I mean, it depends, because let's say Houston, Texas has a bubble, has been a bubble for home sales for decades because the nature of the industry that resides here in the hub and so forth. Of course, every government on every state runs it differently. California, I can't even believe an 800 square foot home in Santa Monica is 1.5 million.
It's crazy.
This is ridiculous. Who's
Yeah.
going to be able to afford that? And on top of, living a lifestyle for
Right.
that type of, money.
If you think
And
about
we,
it,
yeah,
if you use your numbers, so basically the average price of properties have gone up 4 to 5x nationwide, but in some markets, like you're saying, they've skyrocketed, especially during the COVID years. Real estate went crazy. But you're right, who
right.
can afford that? And that's why they have the 60-month or the what is it? The new, instead of a 30-year, it's a 60-year mortgage that they're promoting, and that I believe is to help the
Yeah.
younger.
No,
Is it 60 years?
right.
Did I get that right?
50.
Um,
I believe 50 is what Donald came up
50.
with.
Yeah. So, and
Yeah.
whatever they're doing there, it's to help the the older, the younger millennials and the Gen
Yeah.
Z, the older Gen Zs, to be able to get into a property, like my kids, for example, to be able to afford to
Sure.
purchase, because being able to make that payment on these houses that are just so high in price compared
Oh,
to,
no doubt. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, if the feds quit, printing money, if it was just going out of style, we wouldn't have that issue either. But
right,
that's another
exactly,
podcast on its own, isn't it?
exactly.
And the thing about the real estate industry is it's not an industry that will burn itself out. We always will need somewhere to live. And the
Right.
thing is how to be able to work effectively in this business. I noticed that in sense of being a realtor and selling homes, you have a huge percentage of folks coming in with optimism, wide-eyed, ready to roll, and realize within the first year, this is an expensive business to be in.
And it's
You
hard.
cannot. Well, it's not only that. I agree with you 100% that it's not a simple, hey, welcome to McDonald's. What would you like? It's beyond thinking on your feet. It's constantly looking at legalities, your contracting, your time frames, your scheduling, your management, and then on top of that, you got to be a psychiatrist half the time to the
Exactly.
party that you're representing because it is so stressful.
It is.
Instance of a
I mean,
transition buying a home.
right.
Right.
And I know when, of course, COVID years, when the market was just hot, a lot of people jumped
Yeah.
in. And then
Yeah.
when the market corrected 2 years ago, when
Yeah.
everything sort of stopped and the interest rates went high, and that was a horrible year
Yeah.
for a lot of agents. And last year was, tough as well.
Yeah.
A lot of those they left. So tens of thousands of agents have left the industry, which
Right.
is good. So the ones that are remaining are the ones that were professionals. They're committed long term. They are hungry. They're looking for business. And for stagers who are watching, thankfully,
Mhm.
our client pool is massive. So whereas real
Mhm.
estate agents, you have your sphere of influence, you have, lead generation and so forth, getting
Right.
listings is very competitive. And
Right.
so, a good agent could sell, 50 houses a year. That's a good agent. A
Mhm.
stager will stage 350 to 400 properties in a year to
Yeah.
crack our nut. And, that income revenue might be more than that agent makes, but it could be less depending on the properties that they're selling. So stagers
Right.
have to hustle to get their clients, but
Yeah.
we have a huge pool of potential clients between real estate agents, investors, and builders, and even directly
Right.
to sellers. I mean, there's a huge opportunity. So I feel as a stager, it's easier for us to get business. It's
Mhm.
all about
Yeah.
how you position yourself and how you market.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that's the key that must be honored. It must be really learned and refined because ultimately that if you just go out there and do ABC and then you don't go past that, then you're just kind of going to be not putting efforts in. Then the intention, the energy is not there. And then
Right.
therefore the outcome is always going to be somewhat disappointing because you weren't on top of it. So this also pivots over to how this business and this industry grew. I had the luxury of coming to with Kat to the first European IHOSP conference. That was fantastic. It literally taught me not only the business within itself, but it taught me the people who was really solidified in this organization in sense of brothers and sisterhood, of understanding what everybody was bringing to their regional markets, how they were enhancing their communities, how they were, of course, definitely, creating great homes for families. Now, the thing that I've learned out of this is that while Barb came up with this idea and has this mindset and saw it bigger than life thing and went on, you had such a hand in helping developing the path to the world. Can you share a little bit in regards to behind the scenes? Like, for instance, the articles that showed up in newspapers or the television appearances that came on, on cable network news and things like that. How did you have the foresight to get that involved?
Well, it kind of all goes back to marketing and promoting, it's educating the end user. So with staged homes, the courses educate the real estate agent and the stager. Then there's the whole thing of educating the public, so they understand that, who to hire, why they need to hire. So educating the public then requires media presence, articles, magazines, television coverage, and so forth, whatever we can do. And initially, there wasn't a lot of that going out there because the publications and so forth didn't really see staging necessarily as legit. So that really kind of started to shift, I would say, like in 2005. That's when 2020 did a segment. And, looking back on that today, we would never film a segment like that today, because it was like one of our classes where you went out in the field and you could only use what was in the homeowner's house and set the scene and so forth. And I was on the living room team. I remember going out, I had to build a column in the corner to put a vase on. So I went in their garage and I found the husband was I don't know what he did. He had an event, those stanchions, the things with the red ropes. So he had some of those in his garage. So I took one, covered it with a sheet, found a vase or something. I created this thing in the corner. And that's what we did back then. You used what the homeowner had, and it transformed the house. Now staging 2006 was the Today Show segment. And this was, Barb got contacted because she was who she was in the industry. And then as time has gone on, there's been other leaders that have come to the forefront. And, so the media has caught on and they've done segments, television shows. Still, they don't necessarily get the television shows correct as far as what staging really is. You can just work with what a homeowner has, and we do their best is using their time frame and budget to to get the house ready. And for some people, that might just be decluttering, depersonalizing. Others, it could be doing some painting and updating. For others, it's remove everything from the house and they bring all different stuff in. So it's all related to the time frame and budget. But the media part has been definitely accelerated with the television shows. And I think the first one, Designed to Sell, I think that came out like in 2008 or something. And you mentioned something about the Europe thing. And what I wrote down on my notes was community. And so what we've done with expanding from just the US and Canada, where, staging had a foothold, is building a community that's global. And that's what IHOSP is about, the association, getting people connected. And in fact, that Rome conference that you were at, it was the first time that leaders from other associations, you had, they're the different countries, they'd never talked with each other, really even met. And so through the IHOSP umbrella, we brought them together and learned about what each country was doing related to staging. So that was super interesting. And so we continued. So that was 8 years ago, which I can't believe has gone by so fast. But we've continued we've continued to grow and evolve into different parts of the world. South America, Europe, Asia, Australia is big, South Africa is big. So again, any place houses are bought and sold, staging is growing. And those stagers that are watching, why do you need to have a community? Because, people can Google. There's a lot of information now you can find out online. Because, Kat and I started, didn't have the internet, really. Didn't have any of the social media. We didn't have GPS, so had to use Thomas guides to find where we were going, how to read maps. So the technology it helps stagers today getting in. There's a lot of information online, but being able to parse that out and realize this is actually useful, this is not useful, or narrow the time commitment it takes people to go through all that stuff. That's why you take a course. And then you tap into a
Right.
community of like-minded professionals that are global, you know, and, you know, be able to get support. And that's what IHOSP is about. It's about supporting the growth and advancement of business professionals. And so the resources, the education, the books, all those things that we provide, it's all being done to help them grow. It's not, you know, it's not like you're just trying to make money off me. You know, if they only knew,
Right.
you know, we're not rolling in the dough in the staging industry. These associations, they really are there to help the stagers roll in the dough. We want them to be successful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people who are wanting in the business or been in the business, but never pulled the trigger on certification or education, because they don't really understand the value, how much it comes with, that gives your clients the peace of mind.
Right.
You know, from me, I would say not only I've been certified by home builders, but on my, you know, career, I've had a luxury, so-called sales career. And most people don't know I'm certified by Steinway and Sons Piano. That is the grand creme de la creme piano industry on top. And then I've been certified by BMW, you know, top of the top motorcycles, you know. And why did I do all these things? You know, well, number one, because I'm a good salesperson. They hire me for these type of, you know, positions. But they also recognize that when I showed up, I had this great list of certifications from all these great companies that most salespeople didn't even touch. And that gave the employer confidence in regards to, oh, well, you obviously know what you're doing or you wouldn't have this. And upon talking, they realized that, okay, I want to have my clients to have confidence working with my employees, which is somebody who took it seriously. And I really always believe that education, certification is a must if you're a serious player in the business.
Yeah.
And this is across the board. And especially now, having been involved in staging with CAT nearly 15 years now. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Just like that, we got out of the working for the man and started working for ourselves and developing our industry. Kat met you way before I met you, of course. And every time she went to one of the trainings or one of the conferences, she would be glowing coming back. And I saw this year after year, thinking to myself, okay, I'm behind the scenes doing the business, helping marketing and, you know, videos, whatever it may be. But yet there's something magical that's going on with this IHOSP organization. That's why when the Rome being international for the first time, I said, well, you know what? I need to go see this, because this came from going to Florida, going to Seattle, going to North Carolina. All of a sudden you're going to Rome. What's going on? How big is this thing? Right. So kind of share with us that at their one time, Barb decided that she was going to retire and kind of, you know, let someone take over. And that someone was you. And you then invested and took over the company. Talk about that transition a little bit with us.
Sure. And I did want to touch on the education. Not only gives your employer confidence, but it gives you credibility with the customers, the education, being able to say that you're certified and have the top certification. So, you know, anybody watching, no matter what industry you're in, if you can get some sort of a credential that sets you apart from your competition, otherwise you're just white noise. So being able to say that I'm an accredited staging professional master, I belong to the largest global association, and I have 11 other designations related, you know, luxury, investor, sales and marketing, and so forth related to staging, being able to pull that out, that totally sets me apart from others. And it is a reason why people will hire, is the you know, credentials matter. Some people will say that they don't because they don't have them, but I'll tell you that they do matter. And, you know, so definitely get education. So I'm glad you brought that up. So when I took over the company in 2016, it had been a decade of Barb asking me to purchase the company. And because she wanted to retire, she looked at, you know, she was older. She didn't even get started until, you know, she was almost 60 when she launched. So, you know, she was in her 70s and she's looking at some health issues that she had at the time and wanting to simplify. And so I, you know, for 2 years, it took me to find the right people to partner with for that opportunity. and initially had two other. I was a trainer for Staged Homes starting in 2005. So I'd gone and I'd traveled all over the country into Canada and so forth, and met tons of people. And so two of the trainers initially that I approached were like, yeah, we're in. And then I found a third one who also said, I'm in. And so between the four of us, we're able to pull it together to get the funding and so forth to be able to buy the company. And then we grew it. It was, we grew it over 70% in 2 years. So we were well on track to just go gangbusters. And then of course, 2020 happened and COVID. And so I'm not going to lie and say that it's been an easy ride. You know, when you teach 18 courses a month live in real estate offices and boards and so forth around the country, and then all that comes to a screeching halt, we had to completely reinvent how we taught. So that's when the virtual education came on. Right. So things like StreamYard or Zoom and these different platforms became vital for us to be able to continue to teach. And then a lot, you know, there, of course, there's competition. There's other courses that are out there. I, of course, think ours is the best. It's the only accreditation, which is an accreditation has to come from a recognized school, and Staged Homes is recognized. And so people that take our classes are accredited. They're certified as an accredited staging professional, real estate agent, partner real estate agent, or accredited staging professional stager. And then you also have the designation. So they have all three. And, but, you know, so the industry, the way education has changed from COVID is that I think online education really took off you know, for the platforms. People don't want to leave their houses necessarily to have to go travel somewhere to take a course. I know there's always exceptions. There are people that still like going in person, but we definitely have seen a major shift in that arena. So, but education is still vitally important. The self-paced courses, people love those because you can take them at your leisure. You know, you take a test to prove that you actually paid attention, and you can get credentials. So the technology aspect of it, you know, being able to stay up with that and use it to our advantage has been, it was a challenge, but something that we've definitely worked with.
Right. And I think Barb,
yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say with education, being able to be accessed easier than to go on location is a heaven sent, I believe.
Yeah, because we could do virtual live or self-paced. And so in 2016, when Barb and Kirk sold the company, you know, her intention was to retire and step away. You know, Staged Homes was her baby. She has a daughter, but as many people know, brain damaged. And so she's, you know, never going to have grandkids and so forth. So Staged Homes really was Barb's baby. And so our promise to her was that we would continue to grow and advance. And that's exactly what we've done. And we opened up Europe. We've expanded across the world, added education, updated the courses, advanced IAHSP. IAHSP has definitely transformed from what it was back when she ran it. One of the first things I did was open it up to other designations or credentials. So IAHSP, for those of you watching, it's the only association that requires education as a foundation in order to join. And that's because education matters. You just heard us talking about that. So we want to make sure that people that are part of our association is not just pay your money and join. It's actually that you've been educated by a reputable course that we vet and, you know, look into before we give someone the membership. And there always are exceptions. So there's actually an approved exception rule. So I just had somebody write to me 2 days ago and ask if I would take a look at their business model and their business and approve them for membership. And she's been staging for a decade and does great work. And so I'm like, yes, you can be a member. So, but the foundation of the education, and initially it was just the Staged Homes grads. And so as other courses entered the marketplace, we were turning people away who wanted to join. And I was tired of doing that. And we were being accused of being elitist and, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, we're going to open it up to all qualified education. And I talked to Barb about that before I did it. And she was 100% in support of it. So that's what we did. And that allowed us then to grow and expand the way we have, because it's not just about one credential anymore. And it really is about building community. And I don't want to turn people away, and I want to help them. I want to help them succeed. So IAHSP is a family. People that come to our events, they feel different than other industry similar events. We're warm and inviting. We hug. I'm approachable. You know, it's a big difference from other groups, and that's not like fake at all. It's just basically that's how we are. We really care about our industry. We care about the members. I care about the future. I care about future leaders and who's going to step up. And I've been saying this for 3 or 4 years, I'm not going to do this forever. And so who's going to fill that gap when the leaders who are in place now, when we move on, who's going to come in and continue to grow the industry, make sure it stays a viable part of real estate? And the answer isn't to get bought out by some real estate entity. I feel like staging needs to remain independent. And so the stagers have a place that they can go to get supported versus just being folded into some other massive, bigger industry, which they're not going to get the support or the direction they need.
That's right. All right. Yeah, I think that's a smart move because, when somebody else comes in, their motives are different than the stagers and the staging professionals, and that could definitely compromise the service as well as, everything that goes with it, the history of it. And with the way it has been developed, what I really liked is the last couple of years where there's, appointing of the new presidents and appointing of the new officers and so forth. I think the IAHSP as organization has reached another level of excitement, another level of just resources that I don't see anything else even come close to it. And I'm not saying that because, I'm just saying overall in staging, when I look at social media, right? Let's take Facebook, for instance, and you literally look at some of the staging groups, and there's a lot of people out there just kind of willy-nilly saying, I got a staging business. Okay, how long you been staging? 9 months. And they're asking the most principal basic questions. Now, the problem I have with this is, how are you handling clients who's handing you thousands of dollars in their trust to sell their home if you don't even really understand the principle of the business?
Well,
right?
And that's
so
that's
I
probably
think
I 100% agree. That's probably one of the biggest issues is the people that get into the industry, they love being creative. They get attracted to I get to buy furniture. I get to do these different things. And they don't understand that it's a business. And so from the beginning, you need to learn how to set up a business properly, which is what our course focuses on. Because you can learn the creative side. You either have the God-given eye for it or you don't. And you can be taught the process of staging. But the people that really excel have this, just that they have a gift and they can pull things together and do things that other people in the industry that don't have that same gift and the vision, it just doesn't look the same. But that said, the business side, the goal setting, the planning, the financial part of it, how do you price your services? That one, we have the Home Staging Professionals group on Facebook, and that question comes up every single week, if not daily. How do you price your service? What would you charge for this house? And I get on there and I say, it doesn't matter what this person would charge. They're not you. They're not your business. They're not in your market. They're not running your company. Right. You need to ask yourself, what is your cost to run this project? How much money then in profit do you want to make? And that's how you figure out how your pricing structure should be. It doesn't matter what someone else is doing down the street, because like what I charge for my services, I know I'm making a profit. I'm paying my team members, et cetera. We're very efficient. I don't take all day to stage a property. So someone that's taking all day, they're going to have to charge more than I do. It doesn't make me a lowballer. It makes me more efficient. So that person either is going to have to step up their game and learn how to do things more efficiently to compete, or charge less. I don't know. And I hate saying that, but the pricing, the issue of pricing is not that. I can tell you, anybody that calls me or contacts me, I can tell you what the base going rate for staging hourly is in your market. And that's where it all starts. You need to know what your hourly rate is, because you build everything off of that for your pricing. And you don't tell your client your hourly rate, but you use that to calculate your staging service. And then you have your items. We teach people how to price, for that too. But the pricing question, because it doesn't matter what someone else is charging, even in the same market, because they're not running the overhead could be different. And I feel like I say it so many times until I'm blue in the face, but stagers need to understand that it's their business. And what are your operating costs? What does it cost you to run your company? How much money do you want to make? That's really what it's all about. And that's why education, circling back to the association, we have pricing courses, we've got marketing courses, and I could charge $1 for them and people still wouldn't take the time to watch the information, and they'll instead ask a question on Facebook or maybe do a Google search. And it's like, to me, it doesn't compute. And that's why it's the 80-20 rule, Jeff. 80-20. 20% will run the industry. 80% will try and quit.
And it's sad that people come in with great intentions, right?
Mhm.
Because they like design, they like the activity aspect of it, they like running their own schedule. But outside of that, dealing with spreadsheets, well, that's not really my thing. How could it not be your thing if it's your company?
Right.
And the thing is, if you fail at building your company, then you're going to fail your clients. And that is ultimately the bad taste that they will leave, and not only to your company, but to the entire industry. I
Right.
tried a
I
stager one
immediately.
time and it was horrible. So therefore I'm not using them again. I hear this also about realtors too. Yeah. I
Mhm.
don't ever use a realtor. They're a middleman that we no longer need. I
Right.
hear things like that, well, I could do this myself. Yeah, you can do it yourself until somebody screws up one thing. And next
Right.
you know, you better have your law library next to you. You
Right.
better start figuring out exactly what you need to protect yourself with, because there isn't a realtor protecting you at that point. And
Right.
these are the
I
things
think
that I think.
the real estate industry in
Yeah.
general has sort of gotten away from that messaging where it's not the agents are not just hired to, put a sign in and sell your house. It's the legal protection. It's making sure that
Oh,
the
yeah.
seller is protected from any potential issues that can come back
Yeah.
to haunt
Yeah.
them. And that certainly has
Right.
happened, with John and Steven, my husband and son, their business,
Yeah.
they've had issues where, some buyer is not happy or the seller, whatever. And it can, if without the protection,
Yeah.
legally in your business, it'll wipe someone out, for sure. And it does.
Oh,
One
easily.
bad apple ruins the whole bunch. We've all heard that saying, or maybe you
Yep.
haven't, but it basically, you have a rotten apple, it can rot the
Yes.
other ones too. So that
Right.
speaks to a stager who doesn't operate
Yeah.
professionally. Several times last year, I had calls where my stager can't deliver the way she
Mm.
promised on this date. Can you
Yeah.
help me? And
Right.
that's a stager that doesn't have the items. They don't have
Yeah.
enough, I call it assets, equipment instead of inventory, but
Yeah.
the industry uses the word inventory, but from a financial standpoint, that's actually a negative. However, the items that are
Mm.
needed for staging, as the stager
Yeah.
doesn't have it, if I don't have something personally, I'll buy it.
Yeah.
I don't commit to a staging unless I know I have the right items to put in that property, not just any old items.
Yes.
And so
Right.
by not fulfilling their agreement and commitment to the client, that client's left scrambling. The stager will never get another job out of that client. Bad news travels faster than good. And so by
Yes.
overcommitting and not following through and being professional, they just killed their business.
Yeah.
So you want to overpromise, you want to underpromise and overdeliver. That's
Yeah.
the old saying. So, and
That's always. Yeah.
people that find themselves in that situation, you don't just quit on a client. If that ever happened to me, I'd be like, I got to figure out this out. If I don't have enough stuff, where can I rent it? Who can I get this from? I would never call
Right.
a client and say, I can't deliver for you because, they don't even sometimes give a reason.
Yeah.
Or I love the other thing. Oh, we're booked out for a month solid. We're booked out for 3 weeks. And that's a staging company that doesn't have enough items
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
support all the stagings, because
Right.
I'll put another truck on the road if I need to, time wise, if people are demanding this, as long as I have the
Yeah.
items, I can put another truck and crew on the road to get that
Right.
property staged. I'm not going to say
Right.
no, but
Yeah.
it is a business, and it can reward people handsomely. 7 figures, 8-figure businesses. I mean, those exist in staging. And for some stagers, they just want, a 5-figure, something to
Yeah.
supplement, something to do. Then it can grow. If people want to do that, we teach them. You can go to 6, 7 figures.
Yeah.
But setting it up properly from the beginning is important. And now,
Yeah.
thank God, there's VAs and people you can hire to do the paperwork that you hate to do, and they're not that expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like
Yeah.
doing the paperwork side either. I like bringing the money in. I like seeing the money. I
Right.
don't like reconciling everything. I hate that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think anybody really enjoys that part of the business, but it's instrumental to the success of it. And
Right.
this is where I want to really address to a lot of the folks out there who is in the business probably less than 2 years, and if they didn't get proper education or proper mentorship, to kind of guide them of how to go about certain things, they often make mistakes that could easily be stopped,
Right.
especially costly mistakes. And I'll give you an example would be someone who did a couple staging for a realtor, a friend of theirs. So all of a sudden they got a couple under their belt. They feel pretty good. Realtor lands a great listing. And of course, they're going to go to their friend to stage it. The friend's going to go, great. Walk into this house, 16-foot ceilings, big walls, don't have a clue about scaling the stage because they've never been taught. Right. So they bring in furniture that fits in a house 1/3 of that size and make the house look stupid.
Right. It does. They use the wrong style. They use the wrong scale. Stagers that are newer, I mean, they're excited. A lot of times they give their services away. And as I've said, you've heard me say this probably two dozen times, there's no value in free. So don't give your services away, even to a friend, an agent, always express what the value should be. Then if you want to give a promotional incentive or a discount off of that, at least they know what the amount should have been. So they're not going to come back and try to get that low ball price again. But it is discouraging when they stage it improperly and then it doesn't work. And then you're going to have the agent and seller say, well, staging doesn't work. And staging does work when it's done properly. Right.
That's right.
And so we fight this battle constantly with that situation. People going into properties and not having the right items or not knowing what to do. And the great thing about an association is you could call a colleague and go, oh my God, here's the pictures. I don't know what to put in these places, but even in the staging group, there's some of the questions about room layout and arrangement. These people should know what they're doing. I see the questions. I'm like, you should know how to arrange this room. What I did before I got started, and this again back 24 years ago, staging had taken off 3 years before I got in. So I started searching for stagers. I didn't care where they were located. And I looked at their before and after pictures. I found every picture I could find online. And I would ask myself in the before, what would I do in this room? How would I stage it? And then I would look at the after and I'd say, okay, they thought of the same things I did, or I didn't think of that, what they did, or I don't like what they did. I would do it differently. And that's how I trained my eye for staging. So like Kat can do, and probably you now, because you've been around it so long, I can walk into any room in a house. I'm like, this is how this is what I would do to set it up. I don't have to send a picture online and go, where would you place the couch? Or what would I do with this weird niche above the fireplace where the TV used to go? It's like, I know what to do because I've done it. I've seen it. I've studied what placement and so forth, proper placement and flow. And that's what the education does. People need it.
Yes. Yeah, well, no doubt. If there's any time, let's say Kat decided to get out of the staging business and we want to keep the business, I would go get certified immediately. Yeah. Because I know that the credibility, the education is going to fill in the things that I didn't know, especially things that I think I know, but thought wrong. Right. So those are the kind of things you always want to eliminate. Like the thing that what I brought up about scaling is I don't think a lot of stagers who's new at the business really understand scaling is so important within the price point of homes. Right. And if you bring in something that looks like it belongs to a $150,000 home into a $600,000 home, you're screwing the pooch here.
Right. Or even like the higher end properties too. The property items need to be commensurate with the property price. And so, in our market, a high end could be, anywhere from like 1.5 to 1.5 million. Higher would be high end. A luxury would be, $5, $6, $7, $8 million. So you have different things that go in these properties. And, there's plenty of average houses to stage. So people that don't have the right product don't go into these other houses and stage it improperly, because what it does is it negatively impacts the entire industry when it's not done properly. We just are going to be staging a 9,000 square foot house, and it was staged poorly. Not even one piece of art on the wall. Furniture not to scale for the rooms and the style of the property. Some of the staging that was done looked nice, but by the most part, I'm like, it looks completely unfinished. I'm like, is she coming back? I mean, there's no decor. There's not even one surface thing, and so. The house isn't going to sell that way, that kind of a property. It's almost a $3 million property. So thankfully the client I worked with him in the past. And so he reached out to me and I don't like to diss other stagers' work, but I'm sure it was a factor of budget, making sure they have the budget to allocate for that proper staging and having the right items. So
no doubt. Yeah. Especially artwork, a lot of stagers don't have the facility to store a lot of artwork, especially the one that takes up the wall. Right. Very few. But I know my warehouse, we have at least a collection in the corner that is exclusively for those type of sizes. And if we don't have it, we have a roster of artists we can actually commission to do something to make that happen. This is the kind of preparation and understanding I believe professional staging companies have, where the so-called pretenders who comes in, did a couple of jobs and still trying to keep their head above water, do some of the stupidest, dumbest decisions. And let's talk about that money aspect of it. Okay, well, our truck don't roll out under $3,800. I mean, it's like it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of know-how. No, don't count of all the years we've invested into developing this. But somebody comes in and goes, okay, well, I got 1,500. Good luck. But then there's that one staging company that says, I'll eat $500 to take the $1,500 gig so I can have future business. That is the ultimate bad decision. I promise you, no real legit business in any industry takes a loss to earn a business. And if you do, you're not staying in business.
It's like shooting yourself in the foot. It's failing before you even get started. And what would be better is if a person says, this is my budget, then you stage according to that budget. Okay, instead of doing 5 rooms, we can do 3, or we can do 2, or whatever it is. I mean, I can't roll my truck for less than $600 to $700 either. And then I have the labor on top of that. So I had a client, she wasn't the client, a person reach out, a seller. She wanted staging pricing. So I started talking with her and she was like, oh, I'm getting a couple of other quotes. And this one stager wanted to charge me like $900 ongoing for the items. I said, well, yeah, that's how stagers make their money. This is a business. I said, we don't buy all these things to put it in your property just to let it sit for free. I said, it'd be the same thing of renting a car. Anytime you're renting anything or paying for ongoing use of something, you have to pay for it. Otherwise, you have to go buy it, And so we're preventing you from having to go buy things you don't need. We have the right items that look on trend versus your dated, damaged items. So it was sort of like an aha moment for her. She just didn't understand how the business works. But the revenue, there's a lot of revenue streams for staging. There's a lot of different ways we can make money. And it's about, again, getting educated on how to pursue those, whether it's niche things like holiday staging or, working specifically with investors, doing luxury, doing average houses, even short-term rental, mid-term rental. Those are all offshoots of what a stager can do. And you don't know all of that unless you learn. And one of the things I love about our association is seasoned pros like Kat and myself and many others is we're like, here, ask me a question. I'm an open book. Even somebody in my market, I don't look at them as competition because they're not going to steal my clients unless I have given my client a reason to go somewhere else, so I don't live in fear of that. I also don't just have one client. I'm very diverse on that. So, if a real estate agent or somebody does choose to go elsewhere or they stop selling, they retire, my business doesn't feel it at all. It's like that finger in the water, it's, I don't, the ripple effect type of thing. So, but we're open books. And so ask questions and better yet, tap into the knowledge that we've already provided. The book I wrote, the Stagerpreneur book that you published, Yayu Publishing. So those of you watching, if the first time you're tuning in, Jeff, of course, is Yayu Publishing. And he
everybody see it, right?
So True Confessions, and then this is The Marketing Made Simple. These 2 books he has, and we'll be adding more. True Confessions was basically my journey. So from the very beginning, the mistakes I made in is 25 revelations, reflections, and remembrances of a professional home stager. Things I wish I would have known before I got started. Some of the challenges I faced, things, advice, how to avoid certain things. You brought up new stagers that aren't educated and haven't taken the time to do that. One of the things they get burned on all the time is they don't have agreements in place. They stage, there's no payment agreement. There's no, this is in here for this term. And then they're like, oh, I want to get my stuff out, but I can't get into the house, or I'm not making any money on my things, or whatever the situation is. They have staged unprotected. They don't have an agreement. And that's something that from the very beginning, I was provided agreement templates and we've enhanced them. But just that simple knowledge that comes from education, that comes from a course, is talking to the professionals who are successful in the industry and how so many people have missed that basic tool. I mean, you're putting items in a house that you own and you're completely unprotected. And I learned that the hard way. Also, we had an partially occupied home. This is years ago. And the seller moved to Southern California from Sacramento and decided to take the value of the items that she felt she'd paid for with her and just stole all of our stuff. So
Wow.
in that situation, because in the stager, she was one of my team members, so she was in control of the project, but she was completely unprotected. And then another time they had an
Mhm.
occupied house they staged, and
Yeah.
same thing, they didn't have a way to get their stuff out. So they literally hid behind the bushes outside the front door, she and her daughter.
Wow.
And they waited for the homeowner to come out of the house, and then they jumped out like, "Hi, we're here to get our stuff," because the homeowner was ignoring their phone calls. And so,
Wow.
and that was like 20
Yeah.
years ago. So now things have
Sure. Sure.
definitely advanced, but
Yeah.
there's no reason for a stager to be put at risk like that when there's knowledge and experience and people that will tell you, don't do that, do this. Just
That's right.
ask. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's a great advice, because there's so much variables that could cost the staging company money from the seller end, that we couldn't possibly sit here in an hour to cover all of it.
Yeah.
But I will say this: the book, The True Confession of a Stagepreneur, is a must read if you're in the business and you have not got any certification or anything, but you just like what you're doing. You need to at least read the book. It's on Amazon. Get it. It's affordable. It's not like, outrageous in price. But the key thing is you need to understand the business from a different point of view from all sides. And if you understand those little things that could help you avoiding pitfalls and cost you money down the road, it could actually save your company. I like I said, if you are the kind of person that's already practicing, I'll lose a couple $100 to take this job, you don't know how to be a professional. You're
Right.
doing it wrong. So, and I know that sounds harsh, but we're right here. We're talking about decades of professional in the business, and we're telling you straight up, don't do this. Like if the banker
also,
tells you,
I did that. I did give
ahead.
it away. I probably addressed that in the book too. Like, realtors come up, well, if you give us a really great price on this first house, we have all these other houses coming. We're going to use you for all of them. So
Right.
you think like, oh, okay, I'll lower my price, or I'll do it for free. And you do. And then this other business, it never manifests. They just go find some other sucker who's going to do it for
That's right.
free or a low price. And that's their motive. They're not a client that you want anyway. And yeah, I mean, and the reason Jeff is saying this is because, he's lived it with Kat. I'm sure that she did the same. You think like you're being a good citizen, I'm going to help this client out. So those of us that have been in the industry for as long as we've done that. You don't have to do that to get business.
No.
Lead with your value. And that's what the marketing book also, it takes you through everything related to marketing in a simple way. What you can do, ideas, but it's also your messaging, your brand, your even your passive marketing versus active marketing. What is that? How you keep your name out there. It's crucial that marketing is done properly, because without marketing, there's no sales. And so again, on the staging group, somebody's writing like, I don't have any business. How's your January going? And so I'm like, we're productive. December, November not so great because of the market, but things are humming along. And so I wrote in there, besides asking that question, what are you doing to market yourself? And she wrote, social media, emails. It was all passive. And social media, I think, if people know to look for you, they'll find you. Google, you definitely want to be present on. But I go, pick up the phone. You have a client base that's built in, pick up the phone or text. And what I would teach in the classes is you don't call up and go, hi, you haven't hired me for a while. I need business. I need money. What do you got? You say, I'm getting my schedule together for the next 2 to 3 weeks. And as one of my preferred clients, I want to make sure that if you have something coming up, I have a spot for you. So that opens up the conversation. And when I would call clients and say that to them, I would say 80% of the time they'd say, oh gosh, matter of fact, I'm so glad you called. I have a listing.
Right.
I have this coming up and I'm going to need you. And and it's just simply making a call and not sounding desperado, but stop being so passive with marketing. If somebody's in a place where you're just not getting the business, start hitting the phones, call your clients, ask for referrals, reward referrals. There's just so much that I don't know. I feel like somehow social media and a lot of the technology has made marketing lazy. People don't want to.
No doubt. I agree 100% on that. Because I think a lot of people are afraid of public speaking. They don't like interaction one-on-one. And you know what? Then you shouldn't be in sales. Well, I'm not in sales. I'm a stager.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Or how many people are in your company? Well, me and my husband, or me and my sister. Well, sorry. Then somebody's got to take that hat, because you can't sit there and just post and thinking, okay, I did my work today. Now I'm going to go, do my life. And then next day you come back and goes, well, nobody bit. So I'll do the same thing again.
Right. And if they understand how social media works, and I learned this from Johnny Fowler, who's Mr. Excellent, and Bethany McLaughlin, when you post something, if you don't interact with it within a number of, 15, 30 seconds, it goes off to the side. And there's no way that all the people that you're connected to on Facebook or Instagram is going to see your post unless there's commentary, unless there's some engagement. And even with that, if you have a certain number, if you have less than 3,000 people you're connected with, you're seen by like 80 people. If you're 1,500 or less, it's like 7 people see your stuff. So there's strategy behind social media that I've educated myself to know these things. And so, I know I have to like or interact with my post every time I post, but I don't just rely solely on social media. I know people are looking, they might find me online on Google and Bing. Super important to have a presence on both of those with a business profile.
Right.
And if you don't know what to do with that, there's education on the IAHSP site that teaches you what to do to attach, tack up into Google without paying for advertising. But it's you got to pick up the phone. And you're right. I think a lot of stagers, they don't like speaking. And a lot of reason why stagers like doing vacant houses is you don't have to interact with people.
Yeah.
The house is empty. You do everything on the phone or via email or texting. I don't meet 99% of the clients that I stage for in person. I rarely meet them. And in fact, I attended a realtor event in December for a Christmas party. And clients came up, they recognized me, and they know my name. And it was the first time I'd met them. And I've been staging for these agents for years. So we can hide behind our devices. We don't have to meet people. So that's a plus for some people, but then it becomes a negative because, as you just said, they don't want to interact and they don't want to speak. And you have to do both.
You have to. If you don't want to do that, then don't be in the business, because you're screwing up the business for everybody else by doing it half-ass or doing it incorrectly. And I know that comes across harsh, but let's look at this. If we're in a high-tech industry and we're providing technology to the government, so the pilots who's going into, space can actually be safety measures and those type of things. Can we have any kind of tolerance on error? We couldn't in that industry. So why would any industry that other people build their life savings on, or their whole life around it, have someone who is kind of, lollygagging about it and then drag it down because of their bad performance? We don't need this.
Well, I remember, and the thing is, taking a class or learning from an expert who's been there, can answer questions and so forth, is so important. I remember Barb saying, would you get on a plane with a pilot said, well, I read a book about flying this plane, and so I feel pretty good about it. Or would you want someone that's actually gone through training and has experience, right? And that's a good analogy. It's the difference between, you can read a lot of stuff online, but being able to actually get the key information that you need condensed down into a solid 2, 3, 4, 5 day course, whatever you're taking is vital. And then you never stop learning. Education is a lifelong process, and because the industry keeps changing and evolving, and people could actually AI themselves as a clone, as a twin, and they could actually have the twin doing the talking online. If they really hate seeing themselves, you can tell it to do all that kind of stuff. But I remember my very first office presentation. I was so nervous. The paper I had my bullets I was going to talk on was shaking in my hands. And so I had to put it down. It was like an audience of 12 people in this office. And they didn't clap when they saw me nervous. They didn't like, you suck. They're very encouraging. And so that, I got over that first hurdle. And then by practicing, you get more confident. And so people who are afraid to do that, is just, you got to just jump in, start practicing, and bit by bit, you'll get stronger. And I just think it's sort of funny. The number one fear that people have is public speaking.
Right. Second is death. Right.
Yeah, I know. You think death would be first.
And that's the thing about, if you're really wanting to be a professional in this industry, you really should look at having a mentorship relationship with someone who is successful in this business. And this is why I love what you did this past last quarter of 2025. You, Blair, Sandra went to Europe, start doing education for various different countries while you were there. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Well, sure. Yeah, because on that, I kind of wrote, you just led right into what I had just written down. The education piece, the initial courses that were developed, and going kind of circling back to Barb and when she retired and so forth, and she's still part of the industry because of who she is. However, she never had a company that had a warehouse. She didn't have, she never did the volume of staging that those of us that are, solely stagers, we're not in real estate also. Her business she was a realtor who included staging for her listings, and she might have done a little bit for other people, but her focus was real estate. So as the industry has evolved, the businesses have grown way beyond anything that she ever taught, as far as warehousing and structure and all these different things. And so to me, you can't teach what you don't know. And so one of the benefits of having seasoned pros like Sandra Blair, myself, and John talking about real estate, going over to Europe. So we've taught now in London, we've taught in Athens, in Greece at the conference. I've taught in Rome, educating the audiences and for the Europeans. And so this last one was in the Netherlands, and we had people from 4 different countries or 5 different countries that attended, and different levels of business that they're in. But it's so vitally important because any question they had, Sandra, Blair, or I, from the staging perspective, we've lived it. So we're going to tell you exactly what to do or what not to do. Right. And you're not going to get that from somebody was in the industry in the past. Or maybe they had a staging company, but they're no longer active. One of the things that differentiates IAHSP from other groups too is that we're all still active in the industry. We have a vested interest in making sure that it continues to thrive and grow. We know what's working. We've had to adapt for the technology. We've had to adapt with the way things are purchased. The expectations of the target audience, the media, all the influences that we deal with have had us up our game. And so that's what we're going to teach people, how to have a successful business. So it's been great being able to go overseas, and in London we taught as well a master's course. So it's something that we're committed to doing and are being asked to actually go to other countries now. People are inviting us to speak and teach, because I think between the 3 of us, we have something like 60 years of staging experience and have staged thousands and thousands of properties. There isn't a property that I haven't seen or staged, and same with the others. So people tapping into that education and that experience it's vital, and it's worth every dollar or euro or whatever your currency is. To pay for that,
the knowledge of your team with Sandra, Blair, John, everybody doing this, it's the best it gets. You can't form a super team like that overnight. This is everybody I just mentioned. Of course, I've met and sat down and talked with and so forth. So I'm not just talking out of, I think. No, I know. I've been in rooms with all of you. I've been through conferences, after conferences, dinners, listened to war stories, listened to success stories, listened to failure stories, everything. And the key factor that always comes back to me is the naturalness of how everybody pursues their passion. That's the one thing that I got out of it. And 2 is just that it's a support of the brotherhood and the sisterhood of the IAHSP group. How you could be someone who just got into business, first conference, everybody's there to be able to help any kind of questions you have. Plus someone who's 20 years getting ready to get out. What should I do? There's somebody that knows how to do that. And those are the kind of things that I can't stress enough. If you believe that you enjoy this industry, you want to be creative in design, in living spaces and so forth, professional staging company is a great way to make a living, great way to have a career. There's no question, because I've been in it with my wife for now close to 15 years. We've, of course, pivoted and grew laterally in so many different directions with it. So it isn't just that. But I will say this, the education certification aspect of it is so strong, especially with Kat being a triple certified colorist, to be able to gone to 3 different color programs to learn about paint and how we behave, how emotionally, how all those things ties in to now she has the level of confidence to walk into any room on this planet and know exactly how to get the results that the client wants. And you got to have that kind of confidence if you want to have that kind of income.
Right. I agree. And it's so it's
Yeah.
for personal development, it's to support our clients, and it's also for marketing. It's a competitive advantage.
Yes. Yeah. We're taking bits. There's always going to be a someone who's want the lowest and the cheapest. There's always that. That doesn't mean that they have to be your clients.
Right.
I know we sat down in our powwows and meetings and so forth. Oh yeah, I got this call from someone. Is there a follow up now? Because we're not a good fit. Why? Well, they're only wanting to do this, and they're constantly want. Can you give me this? Can you give me that? We're not in the business to give stuff. We're not a nonprofit food bank. So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, it's
So
also like
people need to
I love when
understand
these people will come up. Well, can with this house is taking longer to sell than planned, and I'm not in
Right.
charge of the marketing of the property, the pricing strategy. So an agent that
Right.
comes to me and says that, and then asks for me to reduce my monthly because they're not selling the property. It's like, well, are you reducing your commission?
Yeah.
Did
That's
the
right.
seller reduce their price? Is everybody doing a price adjustment? You're just asking me to do that. And so,
Yeah.
those conversations are, always interesting to have, but, stagers shouldn't have to be squeezed because, we're not in charge of what's happening on the other side as far as the marketing. And
Right.
clients that do that, they don't respect what you do. They don't
Right.
understand. I mean, granted, they're not there to see the process that, when we set up a house, bringing all the furniture, art, decor, and get it set up in a matter of hours, it's like a miracle. I mean, we're good at what we do, and stagers are good at what they do. The client doesn't often see that. So when they're just like, oh, they're just putting furniture in, they don't understand all the process and the prep that went behind it. And years ago, a colleague, Michelle Morris, would say that 80% of the work is done before I ever get to the house. And I've taken that sentence and I say that to them. We've already prepped and planned. All we got to do is execute the plan. You haven't seen all this work that went in ahead of time and all this, the strategy and so forth. And all that feeds into that costs money because that was planning time. It's not just, you were only in my house for 2 hours. Why did you charge me this much? It's, well, there's a lot more that goes into it. So then that circles back to the educating of the public. And so anybody who's in the industry, we are an ambassador for the industry. Our mission is to educate our clients, the public, the agents, the sellers. You can't stop educating them and educating them in the right way as far as what they can expect and why the value of staging and why the pricing. Pricing should be going up every year because housing prices were going up. Now I know some of them are adjusting, but when housing prices doubled in 2020 to 2023 and people are making a ton more equity selling now, and then they're still trying to get you to go down in price. Agents are making more commission, title reps make more money, lenders, everybody's tied to the sale. They get a percentage of whatever that price is. Why should stagers be asked to lower our pricing? It doesn't compute to me. And even in today's market where things might be a little softer, people don't have the option of staging. Is you have to do something to get your property to stand out. So it's an investment. And through the association, there's ways to pay at closing. There's a lot of programs we offer to help with the money side of things. And so tapping into that, the community, tapping into the resources, the services that are offered, getting the education through the association, through staged homes. It's easy to plan out the steps in order to set yourself up for success professionally. And it's the people that think like, well, I'm going to just figure it out for myself and I can go these routes. You cost yourself so much time and money and frustration. And I would even say to the point where people give up because they didn't do it the best way from the start.
That's right. Yeah. Unless they had actually business minds and family, or they've been trained to develop a company from the ground up. Most people are taking blind shots in the dark, reference from watching television shows. And for folks to understand that HGTV in all these shows just is no different than watching a sitcom. Everything is a script. This is not put together on the fly. A lot of things you're watching is actually not true, not real, but it looks great once it's presented as a television program. And you cannot take that as the lead, so to speak, for your business.
Right. And I think some of the younger generation people getting in, they're used to having instant access, instant everything. They want to have the instant staging success. You have to build a foundation, build up your clientele, and your business will grow. Now, of course, you can buy an established business and be, at the whatever level that is right away, but you still have to learn how to know how to run that business. But, it's not every stager has to have a 7-figure business. Not every stager has to have a warehouse. Not every stager has to be this massive, organization.
That's right.
If you are creative and you love helping people, you can have a business that you can make 6 figures. And the ASP course teaches you exactly how to do that. Just telling people what to do in their occupied house, putting their stuff away, decluttering, and so forth. The math works out that you could easily make 6 figures, just you by yourself, telling sellers what to do in their home and not ever have to own a piece of furniture.
That's right. I agree 100%.
That's what I love about the industry. And it's not ageist. It's not sexist. It doesn't care what your background is, who you like to be with. It's basically, if you like helping people and you have an eye and you're creative and, you want to be part of the real estate industry as a home stager, you can. And that's what I love about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do it so well. And I know I kept you a lot longer than I promised, okay. But I want to thank you so much, Jennie, for spending time with us and talking in depth about this industry, because this industry has fed my family for over a decade, and we love being in this business.
It's also, it's allowed us to meet people like you and Kat. That's sort of a serendipity of owning a business and then being able to be part of an organization that has events and allows the, to be global. You can meet people and be friends. Got to know you in Rome, and now you guys are some of our best friends. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity to even get to know you had it not been for the home staging industry and for IAHSP. So
that's right.
I'm grateful.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Mm-hmm. And I wish everyone who's out there watching this, even if you're not in the real estate home staging business, I hope that this information in regards to running effective business can help as well, because realistically, we're not reinventing any type of business wheels. Right. We're being meticulously calculating how to build a strategy for the industry. And this is why Jennie's, your input on how you want to customize this for the way you want your company to develop is the biggest part. And there's a huge attraction to be in this industry, not having to just be, okay, if you want to run a restaurant, you have to have the back of the house, front of the house, none.
Right.
So that to me is one of the perks of being a staging company, is that we can kind of make this the way we want it to be. And,
it's flexible. You're not limited geographically. You could, like, I moved from a different state and started another company. I could go to a different country and start a staging company. So it's not limited geographically. It's not limited. You just have to go where properties are being bought and sold, or you could venture into, like we talked about, the short-term rental, mid-term rental, the design side. A lot of stagers do that. So there's a lot of ways you can parlay your success and use your creativity to help people in so many different ways. And so staging is a great industry. And my goal is to make sure it's here long-term, long after I'm out of the industry, and that it continues to be a viable part of selling properties and buying properties.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the biggest decisions that any individual is going to make, outside of probably picking their spouse, giving birth to their first and second, whatever, building a family, and then is buying your house. Yeah. And that decision, if you do it wrong, it is sometimes a hard mistake to come back and fix. Right. So definitely. Absolutely. Okay. So again, your book is on Amazon, Truth Confession of Stagerpreneur.
And this one as well, too. The Marketing Made Simple.
Yeah.
They're both under Jeff and Yahoo Publishing. Yeah. Get them. You won't regret it. And then you can put my contact info in the somewhere. I'll put Jennie at IAHSP.com. Oops.
Yeah. Well, descriptions and so forth. I'll put all that information in and so forth. And then, of course, this is going to restream on redpills.tv on Sunday. Awesome. Any last words for all of us, Jennie?
No, I just want to say to anybody considering staging now or in the future, it's a great industry. Tap into the brain trust of people who are successful in it now, and don't be afraid to reach out. Get into a community to support you. That's super important. And get education. That is the foundation of your success in any industry.
In any industry. I support that 100%. Well, thank you so much. Stay put. I'm going to play us out on our outro, and I want to tell our audience, thank you for tuning in today. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and the most important part is share it. Because the more people that can see this, the more people can benefit from the knowledge, the tidbits, and all these things that we talk about in building a successful business, the art of mastery, how to refine to a higher level of within self. And these are all things that we preach about here. And with that, thank you so much.
Of course.
And
Thank
we'll
you,
see
everybody.
you on the next episode of 13th Note, Art of Mastery. Okay. I'll come back and talk with you in a second, and we'll say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.